drawn dead. If I have my dates correctly, this is the last day of the Heartland Poker Tour. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna do some laundry. What about that? Back at Hollywood, and it looks like we might be playing 2-5 tonight. I did check the Bravo on the way here, and they have a game going. Unfortunately, though, I'm third on the list, so we're probably going to be getting into some 1-2 action before we can get into the good stuff. Let's jump right into this thing, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you people right now. The night isn't going so well. This is the second hand I've seen and I'm already stuck $25. So obviously, time is of the essence. We need to get even. One limper and I raised to $25 with ace-4 offsuit on the button. Most likely the best hand at this point, but not normally the easiest hand to play, even in position. We see the flop 3 ways after the big blind and the under the gun limper call. Flop. All 7s. Yes. 3 of them. Action is checked over to me and I put in a continuation bet of $40. I don't necessarily expect this bet to get through 100% of the time, but it should get through enough to make it profitable, and even if I get one of the 2 callers to fold, it definitely increases my equity in this hand. The big blind lets it go, but the limper comes along. Limp calling preflop is normally indicative of a small pocket pair in these games, and these players aren't fond of folding full houses, even on tripped boards, and especially not to me. So when he checks the 10 of diamond turn, I follow suit. The river is a complete blank deuce of hearts and it goes check check again, and I expect to be losing here a good portion of the time. He shows ace 9 of spades and I'm happy to get through this hand just chopping up the big blind's money. A few hands later, I look down at king 10 suited in late position. Definitely playable, and I raise it up to $20 over one limper. 2 shorter stacks call behind me and all is well until the big blind 3 bets to 160. Okay, we're done with this one. Probably an hour or maybe 2 into the session at this point, and not much is happening for me. From the small blind, I look down at 2 red 9s, an above average starting hand, but a horrible starting position, so I decide just to call after an early position $15 open and 2 calls in front of me. The big blind calls as well, and 5 of us see a flop of king 8-8. Not a ton going on for me with this flop, and although I'm conceding some equity protection in the case I do have the best hand, I decide to check. Action checks over to the button and he bets a super small $15. Out of the 5 of us that saw the flop, 4 of us continue on to the turn. The turn 2 of hearts still doesn't improve my hand, and action is checked again over to the button, and this time he bets $50. Pocket 9s in the small blind with multiple people calling the flop bet behind me, I decide just to let this one go. Although the process of trying to see flops and actually play hands wasn't working out, I was staying about even purely using positional advantages like stealing blinds and raising limped pots. Unfortunately for me, things in this session just weren't working out. This process of me opening over a limper, getting multiple callers, missing wet flops, and check folding later streets was starting to take its toll. At this point, I was down a few $100s. Finally, if there's one hand that might get me out of the hole, or get me stuck deeper in it, this is it. Either way, there's going to be some action here. I open to $20 under the gun, and everyone folds. Okay, so the aces didn't turn out exactly as I had envisioned, but maybe the tide is turning a bit. Maybe my run good is here. One limper, and I bump it up to $25 from the hijack. The cutoff folds, the button, small blind, and big blind all call, and now the action is back on the under the gun limper. After a short pause, he decides to execute the old limp re-raise line and makes it 150. Bruh, you only started the hand with 370. I don't think so. It's normally always better to come in for a raise rather than to limp in, and that goes double, if not triple, when playing hands from the small blind. Giving up my positional advantage and playing a hand like 6-7 of hearts that plays much better in position makes this play pretty suspect. This play versus these opponents, this may be slightly plus EV long term, but it's close. Over 3 limpers, we raise to 40 from the worst position at the table. Surprisingly, only the under the gun limper calls, and we see the flop heads up. We flop pretty well when Jack 7-6 with 2 clubs hits the board. Since this flop is quite wet with both flush and straight draws out there, we elect to lead out for $60 to hopefully get value from jacks or those aforementioned draws. The under the gun player doesn't take too long with it, and he makes the call. The 10 of spades does bring in the most obvious of the straight draw combinations, and we also may now be behind a better 2 pair. However, checking it and having it check back and thus giving a free card to the numerous other draws would be a disaster. I lead again, this time for $110, and although the under the gun player thinks about it for a second, he folds his hand.
That's essentially how I feel about life. Full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness, and it's all over much too quickly. The question is, have I learned anything about life?
If you've been watching the vlog for a while, and I mean a long while, you remember that I always used to forget stuff. Always, every vlog, I'd forget something. I'd forget a hoodie, I'd forget a backpack, I'd forget batteries, I'd forget This was the first time in a long time I left something in the car. Went out to do the mid-session update, didn't have a camera. Can't do the mid-session update with no camera. Thus, I'm back in the parking garage. And obviously, I have my camera. So let's get to it. Let's get to the mid-session update. And let me tell you what's going on in this game. I got here, didn't have to play 1-2, got right into the 2-5 game, and immediately lost $25. But you know what? That's okay. There's nothing to panic about. $25, no big deal. Played a couple more orbits, nothing really happened, and then I picked up Jack 8 of diamonds, which I think you guys saw. I thought I'd captured this, but I guess I was mistaken. So let's talk about this hand, which was easily the biggest hand I played this session. Action is folded to my button, and I open the betting to $20 with Jack 8 of diamonds. The small blind 3-bets me to $60, and the big blind cold calls. Now having to just call 40 to win 140, I make the call as well. 3 players see a flop of Queen 8-8, Rainbow. The small blind quickly leads out for 175 and the big blind insta-folds. I started the hand with about $900 and the villain covers me, so I actually tanked for a while as I tried to figure out the best way to get all my chips into the middle. With a flop this ragged and no draws available, I thought the best line here would be just to call. So I do. The turn brings a second heart in the form of a 9 and our villain just ships it for about $600 more. I guess all that time I spent on the flop tanking about how to get the money in was kinda moot. I make a pretty easy call here and we see the 10 of spades hit the river with no more action. The villain tables 2 kings and I show my trip 8s that have now accidentally made a straight, and I secure the full double up. Won a pretty big pot there, and since then, just been kind of treading water. Won another decent sized pot with 6-7 of hearts from the small blind. Sort of questionable play, but I flat bottom 2, won that pot. And in the last hand I just played, I put in a 3-bet to 70 with pocket queens and got no action. So here we are, mid-session update time. Session is going great. I'm up maybe, I don't know, $1,000, $1,200, somewhere in that range. The table's holding together, so we probably got a couple more hours in us, at least. Now it's time to get back in the game. And you know what? The more I look around at this lighting, I think we might be doing some more mid-session updates here, especially when it's raining, like it is now. So we're heading back in. I will check in with you guys after the session's over. You know how all that stuff works. Although it's normally nice to end the session with a bang rather than a whimper, you can't always get what you want. Under the gun limp and it folds to me on the button with pocket 10s. I bump it up to 25 and only the limper comes along. You're always happy to see a bunch of undercards on the flop when you're holding pocket 10s, so I have no problems with my $30 flop bet when it's checked to me. The limper check calls and we see not the best turn card, the ace of clubs. Now the under the gun player leads into me for $30. Such a small sizing. It felt more like one of those blockish bets to try to get a cheap price for a draw than it did a value bet. However, not really having a strong enough hand to raise, I make the call. The under the gun player checks when the 4 of clubs hits the river, and I check behind. And I'm actually quite surprised when he turns over ace 3 suited for the rivered wheel. Session is obviously over. So session's over, and let me start with the good news. The good news is, in for $1,000, out for $2,377, so up a little over $1,300. That's the good news. The bad news is after I came back from the mid-session update, I didn't notice that my phone battery was dying. I get back from the mid-session update, my phone is at like 4%. That's not good. So obviously I plug it in, I charge it, it's charging, table gets short. We're playing 3 or 4-handed from there on out. I lose a pretty big pot when I flop a set of 8s and villain river's a flush. Then I win a pretty good pot, one with pocket aces, where I sneakily just flat called a pre-flop raise from the small blind. and the other where I picked off a bluff with King 10 of Hearts. Unfortunately, I don't think any of that recorded. Neither me picking off the bluff or me getting sneaky with aces. I think what we'll probably see is me being here for the mid-session update, and then maybe like the last two hands after my phone had charged a little bit. So pretty disappointed in that, because that was some good footage. That was some good stuff. So quality end of session footage, or no quality end of session footage, I gotta get out of here. So I will say this, if you like the videos, subscribe to the channel. Why not? What else are you doing? Leave me a comment. I will probably respond, and hit that thumbs up icon, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Next time on YouTube's The Drawing Dead. It's Friday. We're at Hollywood. I'm on the list. 425. So let's see what happens.
I keep getting the same two cards.
So how about we just wrap Friday and Saturday into one big extravaganza? How about that? Keep going. Now let's try. So you know we're going to try to get into that. Probably one. The more I think I like the basement of the. But you know what? That's okay. Tables. Now it's time to. Then again, it's raining outside, so you know.
Oh, I gotta go.
Then I win a pretty good pot with. I lose a pretty big pot with. So